Hamlin was back at Joe Gibbs Racing today for the first time since his accident at Auto Club Speedway at Fontana in March. Denny is expected to miss at least the next 6 weeks after suffering the compression fracture in his spine. Today, our Caitlin Vincey caught up with him.
First, Denny, how is your recovery coming along?
You know, I feel, not completely back to normal, but I at least can walk around and be a little bit more mobile. And really, I'm past the physical hurdles that this injury has given me. It's just now the mental of, not being able to get in the race car for the next 6 weeks.
And have you targeted a certain race you would like to get back into the car?
I'm being very optimistic and, not following orders, but I'd like to be back in it at Richmond. Would be a target week that I would love to get back in the car. I think it'd be a great thing to be at my home track and be back in the car, but obviously it's a little bit sooner than the timetable was set for me. I'm going to physically feel fine. Unfortunately, there's things going on inside my body that's not going to allow me to get in the race car until they're ready.
When you do get back into competition, will you have to wear some sort of back brace?
That's yet to be determined. I haven't crossed that bridge with the doctors yet of talking about getting back in the car. Ultimately, I've gone through so many scans and everything that we're trying to keep the radiation levels down on me as much as possible. So we're trying not to, we'll scan every couple of weeks here for a while, and then that's when we'll decide whether I'll need the brace inside the race car or not. But it kind of depends on how my body heals.
The Associated Press, that text conversation between you and Joey Logano did not go so well. Are you still angry with him?
I'm upset that, things just couldn't be let go. We had a great opportunity at the end of that race to let bygones be bygones. I mean, we had, I literally played it out in my mind, if he wins this race, I was going to shake his hand right there on pit lane and congratulate him and tell him that, this is how we should be racing each other. And unfortunately, it didn't play out for either one of us, and I was upset that we had an opportunity to change how we raced each other, and he just didn't let it go.
When did that conflict really begin? Have you two always not gotten along?
We got along fine as teammates, I felt like. I mean, we had the on-track stuff every now and then, just like every teammate does. I mean, I can't tell you anyone that's been teammates that didn't think that their teammate didn't race them harder than they should have at times. But we had that spurt every now and then, but nothing outside of the race car, nothing that really sparked the feud that we had. I ultimately spun him out at Bristol when I did not intend to spin him out. It was a mistake. I said it was a mistake. I said I was sorry on the radio when it happened. That was in retaliation to being chopped off twice, and it frustrated me, and I intended on bumping him, and I did, and it spun him out. But then, he crammed us on a restart, and it made our day bad. We blew a tire. We finished 25th. So he obviously, in my opinion, retaliated at Bristol, and it was over at that point. I didn't realize going forward that it was going to continue, and obviously he still got a good finish, and I ended up, 25th and flying to a hospital.
Well, thank you, Denny. We really appreciate it. We wish you a speedy recovery. Danielle?
Thanks, Caitlin. Nate Ryan from USA Today Sports was also at JGR and spoke with Denny. You just heard Denny's thoughts. I'd like your reaction, Nate. Several layers to this story. Let's start with Denny's physical health and mobility. How did he seem to you today?
He seemed great, Danielle. I think many of us were surprised about how ambulatory he actually was. He was walking around, no pain. He was holding his daughter at one point and showed really no ill effects from the injury. He said he felt like that for a couple of days. He's still wearing a back brace. He expects to wear that for a couple more weeks, but it'll be about another 2 weeks before they do another scan to see where he is.
And he says the physical part is over, Denny does. Now he's just dealing with the mental part. He wants to come back and make the chase. Seems like a double-edged sword, though, Nate. If he comes back too soon and gets re-injured, it could be a career-ending injury.
Right, and that's exactly what he said, Danielle. Denny said that it's more about the mental part of the injury now than the physical part. He doesn't feel much more pain than he already feels. He's had back problems. He knows what that's like to deal with it. And now it's just about kind of getting to the point where the injury shows healing. And he thinks that if it shows healing by Richmond, he could be back in the car for his hometown race. And of course, that's 2 weeks ahead of where they originally told him when they said 6-week timetable.
JD was on, the president of JGR was on our show last week. He said he wanted Denny to have some input in his replacement. Obviously, Mark Martin in the car this weekend, Brian Vickers the rest of the way. Did Denny address those two drivers?
He talked about both of them briefly, Danielle. He told a very funny story about Mark Martin and his first time at Martinsville. He told us that there was a veteran who was cutting him off and running into him and showing his displeasure about the way Denny Hamlin was racing. And then Denny said, oh, and by the way, his name is Mark Martin. I think what's interesting about how they're going to approach this race, we talked to Darian Grubb, his crew chief as well. They're going to put the same setup that Denny drives at Martinsville, which of course has been hugely successful, but they're going to put that setup in for Mark Martin. It hasn't always worked for his other JGR teammates, but Denny Hamlin and Darian Grubb both think it'll work because it's Mark Martin.
Denny also jokingly said Joey may want to switch sponsors with Juan Pablo because he'll have a target on his back if he continues to race guys the way he does. Do you think payback from Tony or any other driver will come to Joey at Martinsville?
I think there's a chance. I think there's a good chance. I think that if it's not payback, if it's not blatant retaliation, Joey Logano gets spun out, it's going to be guys not cutting him brakes. And Denny Hamlin certainly thinks that Tony, as he put it, I believe anything Tony Stewart says.
Maybe a long 500 laps for Mr. Joey Logano. A week